तक यही कंडीशन रहेगा, ऑरेंज अलर्ट है। तो आपको लग रहा है कि कल भी आपको यही परेशानी का सामना करना पड़ेगा?
यस मैम, लग तो रहा है कि कल भी यही प्रॉब्लम होगी। गवर्नमेंट को डेफिनेटली कुछ ना कुछ तो करना चाहिए, कुछ सीवेज नहर कुछ बनवा दे, सो दैट पानी जो भी ड्रेनेज है ये इसके प्रॉब्लम ना है।
सरकार को हम यही कहेंगे कि अभी तो शुरू हुई, तो प्री मानसून बारिश है, नाउ मानसून इज कमिंग एंड रोज 10 दिन तक कंटिन्यूस बारिश है जो IMD की प्रेडिक्शन है। सो वी डोंट नो वेयर दिल्ली विल गो। एंड अगेन कि लास्ट ईयर भी हमारे साथ ये हुआ था कि यमुना का वाटर का फ्लो बढ़ गया था, इस बार भी वही कंडीशंस आ रही है। तो हमने एक साल में कोई इम्प्रूवमेंट नहीं।
All right, so anger and outrage on the ground. The situation right now, as you see, seems stable. It has, of course, Delhi, which was brought to its knees really by the rain this morning. The water has receded, but of course, larger concerns continue to loom because, of course, we all remember those horrific memories of the 2023 deluge. This remains our top focus on NDTV. For now, we'll take a short break.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Brought to you by.
Get the magic of the best working for you now.
Link your payment cards once, collect rewards forever.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही पैसाबाजार.com पर जाइए और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
बस एक्टिंग करा लो इनसे।
पैसाबाजार.com, क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक, आदत अच्छी है।
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV news app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day this lecture hall will be made of code, and driverless cars would be trapped in intersections. But even in this maze of the future, you can't wish away health. It's time to become more resilient. 10 years of Banega Swasth India, we have grown and achieved so many milestones. And now I have a plan to beat the urgency, to stop breathing with difficulty, to relieve getting choked with inactivity. Energize our government, our environment, our society, and ourselves. Everyone, everywhere, every day. Banega Swasth India. One world hygiene.
बहुत बार ऐसा होता है, एंड आई हैव सीन मेनी गाइस जो कि 2 फोन कैरी करते हैं सिर्फ इसलिए कि उनको 2 अलग अलग व्हाट्सएप को रन करना है। एंड समटाइम्स आई अंडरस्टैंड कि मतलब एक फोन होना मुश्किल हो जाता है, बट WhatsApp has a built-in option. अगर आपको नहीं पता है, you can just add an account in the same application. ये बड़ा आसान है. You just go to WhatsApp, आप settings में जाएंगे, account पे जाएंगे, and वहाँ पे you can just add another account. आप नंबर डालिए, OTP आएगा, वेरीफाई हो जाएगा, अपनी डिस्प्ले फोटो ऐड कीजिए अगर करना है तो, एंड दैट्स इट. योर अकाउंट इज डन. बेसिकली आप उसी एक व्हाट्सएप की ऐप में 2 अलग अलग अकाउंट रख सकते हैं फॉर अ पीस ऑफ माइंड. एंड अगर आपको मल्टीपल अकाउंट्स रख के, लेट्स से यू वांट टू यूज इट बिकॉज ऑफ यू हैव 2 फोन नंबर, हो सकता है एक नंबर आपका इंडिया का है, मे बी यू आर ट्रैवलिंग अब्रॉड, आपका दूसरा नंबर भी है, मतलब यू गेट द ड्रिल कि आप सीधा एक व्हाट्सएप ऐप में 2 अकाउंट
Welcome to India Sense, NDTV's premier international show. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. In this show, I view the world of global politics, global economics, and the buzzing world of technology, all through the lens of India. Let's get started. Let's get the headlines this week. First up, India's 18th Lok Sabha has been sworn in. President Draupadi Murmu's joint address to Parliament sets the agenda for Prime Minister Modi's third term. Markets give a thumbs up to Modi 3.0 with benchmark indices scaling record highs. Race to White House heats up as both leaders slug it out in the first presidential debate. Biden stutters and fails to make a mark even as Trump maintains immigration as his biggest and only poll plank. France goes to polls in two phases to elect a new National Assembly where Macron's party could be losing majority. Iranians set to vote for a new president today. The race has 3 hardliners and 1 moderate. Who will Khomeini choose as Raisi's successor? Top voices on India Sense. German envoy to India, Dr. Philipp Eckermann, says rise of far-right in Europe a concern. As Prime Minister Modi begins his third term, British journalist Martin Wolf tells NDTV India can aspire to be a $7 trillion economy by 2030. And WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange returns to Australia after striking a deal with US authorities, ending a 14-year-long legal battle. Assange pleaded guilty to obtaining and publishing US military secrets in a US district court in Saipan in the Pacific. The big story this week on India Sense. Race to the White House heats up. Current President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump faced each other in their first presidential debate. This is the election that the world is watching, and it impacts everyone from Russia to China to Europe to Ukraine to Israel and of course to India. But unlike New Delhi, where irrespective of whichever candidate wins, policy continuity is going to happen, it may not be the same for some of the others. And here's why. Russian President Vladimir Putin is wondering if Trump comes to power, how will the Ukraine conflict end? Trump said on the debate that unlimited supply of funds and weapons to Ukraine must stop. Chinese President Xi Jinping would be wary the next occupant of White House could come down heavily on Taiwan, Tibet and trade. While Trump is set to double down on tariffs, Biden is likely to harden stance on China's invasion of Taiwan. For Europe, questions related to the funding of NATO will be priority. To take on China and Russia, EU and the US need each other. But Biden and Trump have very different ways of addressing these issues. Trump does not keep EU and NATO at the very center, but Biden does. Meanwhile, for Israel, it's a mixed bag. Trump moved the capital to Jerusalem, recognizing Israel's historical claim when he was the president, but he could now wrap up and ask the Israelis to wrap up their war against Hamas quickly. Meanwhile, it seems Biden is willing to wait it out. Meanwhile, for India, as I said, America needs New Delhi, and both Biden and Trump are equally committed to pushing a common agenda related to trade, technology, defense, and the Indo-Pacific. Moving on specifically to the debate, well, it was lackluster, with President Biden faltering early on and being very unimpressive in most of his responses. Former President Trump was meanwhile being his usual self, aggressive, unwilling to answer questions beyond his focus area, which, by the way, was just immigration. Now, as far as the numbers are concerned, under Biden's watch, illegal immigration has reached record levels. In the last 4 years, 10 million illegal immigrants have entered the US. This has allowed Republicans to mix both skilled migration, which is needed, and illegal immigration under the same basket, making it the biggest poll plank. Economy is another issue. Under Biden, US economy has improved. In May, 272,000 jobs were added. Unemployment levels are about 4%. But it's the inflation, the cost of living, that's really hurting the average American. Inflation is about 3.3%, much above the comfort level of 2%, which is why it was such a big issue during the debate. In fact, listen into a slice of that 90-minute debate between Trump and Biden, where Trump hammered on inflation and Biden was unable to drive home the one big electoral plank, which is abortion.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do, all he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. This is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries?
As I said, this is an election that impacts everybody and every country in the world, which is why everybody is looking for body language clues to understand who could really be the next occupant of Oval House. And sitting presidents usually come across as being rusty in their first presidential debates since they spent about 4 odd years in the Oval Office. But the first debate today saw Biden being fairly flat-footed in its responses, being tentative, almost losing his train of thought on several occasions. For the first time, a debate took place even before the two candidates have been formally ratified as the presidential candidates of their parties. Who knows, maybe this could be the Democrats' big strategy to test waters with an aging Biden and see if they could change their candidate ahead of the upcoming national convention. And if Biden remains the candidate, Trump may not agree to a second debate after all, because he's come off as a winner, even though he's a bit abrasive, but he would want this to be the lasting image before the voters go to the polling stations. Importantly, the world's oldest democracy needs to make way for younger candidates. American politics needs to take some lessons when it comes to seeing how younger leaders from their European counterparts are being promoted. In fact, in Europe, it's a 28-year-old Jordan Bardella from Marine Le Pen's party who's taking on the present incumbent, who's a 35-year-old prime minister. And that just tells the story and the disconnect that exists between the European voters and American voters. French polls is what we are discussing on Wide Angle today. It could change the course and direction of French politics going forward. French are voting for the National Assembly in 2 phases, and Macron and the world will know if he will have to live in cohabitation. One where he continues as the president, but the prime minister, the one who's responsible for legislative business, is from another party, Marine Le Pen's party, RN, or National Rally. Given Marine Le Pen's anti-globalization stance, battles with the European Union, a history of friendliness with Russian President Vladimir Putin, it could be that France may be in for some instability or possibly even disruption. Who knows? President Macron, as a centrist, has backed a more globalized worldview. Le Pen, on the other hand, is a votary of greater protectionism, inward-looking approach. And this could lead to a logjam in the assembly. Big policy decisions could be unlikely. Future of trade could be impacted between France and some of its major partners, including India. This is not a scenario that is unlikely. It's very much within the possibilities that exist. And the outcome of French polls matter to India for 3 very important reasons. 1, the protectionist trade view. 2nd, the hawkish stance that the right-wing party has on immigration. And lastly, France is the biggest maritime power in EU. A Eurosceptic PM could signal a change in the Indo-Pacific policy of the entire EU. And that, of course, will have huge ramifications for how India's strategic direction will be for the Indo-Pacific. Now, European Union is a bloc of 27 countries. India is the 3rd largest trading partner with 88 billion plus in terms of trade in goods in 2021, about 11% of India's overall trade for the year, with Le Pen's party being Eurosceptic and even some would say anti-European. EU trade is bound to be impacted. And world needs to brace for some very contrary signals that may come from Paris in the next couple of months. Macron would be in charge of foreign, defense and the larger European policy, but Le Pen would be in charge of domestic policy. And here's how it's going to play out. Just for an example, viewers, If President Macron backs Ukraine's membership into the EU, he needs legislation to back it up. But without a majority in the National Assembly, he can't do that. So his agenda is going to be very quickly derailed with an ideologically opposed government led by Marine Le Pen. So who knows, Macron's big gamble could lead to big instability both for France, for EU and for the larger world. The Top Voice segment on the show. Well, the 8th of July is when the world will know whether Macron's big gambit has paid off or not, but the instability is set to impact the entire European Union. I spoke with German envoy to India, Dr. Philipp Ackermann, the first top voice on the show, on the present flux that EU is witnessing. On one end, there are newer members like Ukraine, Moldova being inducted, and on the other end, there are political forces that are opposed to the very idea of European Union that are now gaining steam across the continent. What happens going forward? Listen in.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And first of all, thank you very much for having this conversation with me. But I would say there is a resurgent right. There is no doubt about it. We've seen it during the latest European elections. But at the same time, you have to see that the center still has a very comfortable majority, and we have seen decision has been taken that Ursula von der Leyen, the German president of the Commission, will continue to be the president of the Commission. We'll have an agreement on the president of the Council, who will be the former Portuguese prime minister, and we have the agreement on a new European foreign minister, as it were, namely the Prime Minister of Estonia, and that shows that the European Union has a clear decision and resolve to continue to be a very, very important political and economic factor. So I say yes, there are question marks. There are parties in Europe that might wish to change one thing or the other, but overall I think the elections have shown that the center left and right, has a very, very good majority. Now you are referring to the new candidates, and as you rightly say, Ukraine and Moldova have been the newest of a series of candidates. The
negotiations have started.
Exactly.
It's a long process.
It's a very long process. We won't see them the day after tomorrow joining the EU. And you should not forget there are a couple of other countries in line, like Kosovo and Albania and Montenegro and some Balkan places who want to join the European Union. So there is still a very strong soft power the European Union has, and I think there is, after the disastrous experience with Brexit, there is no wish in no country really to leave the European Union, and that even Marine Le Pen, she started a couple of years ago saying that we have to leave the euro and we have to leave the EU. That she doesn't say anymore.
Does this impact, let's say, the institution of European Union as a whole? Is that now something that it's being tested right now in country after country?
We have seen over the last decades that many countries have tried to reform the European Union, have tried to introduce new legislation, and that is an evolving process and will continue. And therefore I think that I'm pretty confident that even with new composition of members in the European Parliament, we will have a big majority for those who want to continue to work in a constructive way within the European Union. And one thing you should not forget is that these right parties who now get a bigger share of the seats in the European Parliament, they don't like each other so much. So, for example, the German right-wing party and the French right-wing party don't get along, not at all.
Is that a comforting factor?
It is basically meaning that the extreme right is not, showing the strength or the overwhelming share of its role in the European Parliament. It's a fractionized right, which means that the center is more powerful. I can say that, I think.
And what happens to some of the fundamental policy framework that defines the EU? And we would see some of that in France as well post 7th of July, whether it is around immigration, whether it is around fundamental issues related to economic unity. Do you think those specific issues could possibly undergo a lot of change?
So I think you'll have a new political shift in the European Parliament that will reflect European legislation. It will reflect policies in the Commission and in the Council. There is no doubt. I would say there is one central problem in Europe that is reflected in the election result. That's the problem of migration. Everything else is, I think, manageable. But the migration thing, there is so much pressure from the east and from the south to the European Union that countries, including mine, people get more and more uncomfortable with the situation of illegal immigration. And you will see that the new Commission will try to take more decisive steps to dim or to reduce illegal immigration as much as we can. There must be a sort of a channelization, there must be a regulation of migration. At the same time, and that's very interesting, almost all of Europe need skilled labor migration. Why? Because the demographic development in Europe is so frightening. Germany has a birth rate of 1.5, 1.6. If we want
all of it is under,
it's under the
TFR of 2.1.
TFR, exactly.
Needed for replacement.
Exactly. And in countries like Poland or Spain or Italy,
it's even lower than that.
So in order to keep
such issues get impacted because everything falls under the umbrella idea of immigration, and even the skilled migrant issue sort of gets lost in it.
So I don't think that this is necessary, and I think when you talk to Germans, for example, the country I represent here, people can distinguish between legal and illegal immigration. So there is when the small and medium-sized entrepreneur looks for skilled workforce, he has the sympathy of his colleagues in the plant or in the factory. What they don't want is migration that undermines the social welfare, and that's people who are seeking asylum, people who flee for economic reasons, and they can't find jobs right away. So skilled migration is basically something that, and we agree upon this, even the right wing would not say no to it, is something that we need, and that's my government and many other governments too are now really recruiting quite strongly people to come to Germany, amongst others in India.
The second wide angle on the show, Iran is voting today. These elections are very interesting because they claim that people vote their president in Iran, but in reality, candidates are first vetted by the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, and then allowed to contest in a largely scripted election. Now, these elections have been necessitated by the death of President Raisi. Like all despotic regimes, who wins these elections is not determined by the people, but by the fact who suits the Supreme Leader, whose agenda suits the Supreme Leader's agenda the best. Now, there were 6 candidates. 5 are hardliners with close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. 2 of these have dropped out, and now there are 3 that are hardliners and 1 that is a moderate. This is meant to ensure that there are better chances of the 3 hardliners, that is Saeed Jalili, Mohammad Khalibaf and Mohammad Zarif, against the reformer candidate, that is Masoud Pezeshkian. But the interesting thing is, 3 out of the last 4 presidents of Iran did not share a great rapport with the IRGC. The last president, Ibrahim Raisi, shared not so cold vibes with the group only because he didn't happen to serve in the military outfit. Now, does this mean that these 3 hardliner candidates are out of the race? Well, the matrix is not so simple. As I said, it's all about what the Supreme Leader wants. On paper, the 4th candidate, that is Masoud Pezeshkian, is a reformer. He could be a good counter to the hardline politics that's playing out in Iran. It could be a good thing to say to the world, to the Western media particularly, but in reality, he's in the race to ensure better voter turnout. Since higher turnout will allow the regime to claim legitimacy, and voters will come out only because there's a moderate voice on the ballot. Khamenei would not want a very strong leader since he may represent a threat to him, and that could be the only reason why Pezeshkian could be in the race on a serious note. But alternatively, Khamenei may prefer someone with a firm ideological stance since he has shaped all Iranian institutions in a manner that only the most ideologically aligned are in power. But whoever may be selected as the next president of Iran, his biggest priority will be to use Iran's proxy network at a time when Israel is set to escalate its conflict with Lebanon. This very proxy network forms the very core and very integral part of Iran's security policy and foreign policy. Take a look at how important and vast this entire network is. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran has formed, supported and funded a growing number of fighting forces throughout the region. Iran's Quds force is the main point of contact with these groups, arming them with weaponry and providing them with funds and training. The Quds force is a part of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the primary military outfit of Iran. This network of fighters has been created to serve the Iranian regime's larger political goals of regional hegemony, limiting Western influence, and creating a united front against common enemies, primarily Israel. So who all form part of Iran's proxy network? Hezbollah, a Lebanese political party and militant group, forms the core of Iran's proxy network. Then there are groups in Shiite Muslim majority countries such as Iraq and Lebanon. Militant outfits in Sunni majority Palestinian territories, Syria and Yemen are also part of this network. Hezbollah is a known terror organization which has helped Iran bridge the Shiite Arab and Persian divides. Iran has also used Hezbollah to support the Bashar al-Assad regime in the civil war in Syria. Tehran's support also extends to the Houthi rebels in Yemen. This proxy network provides Iran complete immunity, and no president will dismantle it. With that, we're slipping into a very short break. Stay with us. We come back with lots more on the other side.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक करें फ्री में पैसाबाजार.com पर। लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
ठीक से एक्टिंग नहीं।
पैसाबाजार.com।
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
It's time for the favorite section जिसका मैं इंतजार करता हूँ हमेशा. It's called Ask TG and यहाँ पे I answer all your questions. Let's see what we have for this week. Okay, two things. One, that maybe the kind of work that you are doing on your laptop is
Welcome back. You're watching India Sense with me, Gauri Trivedi. Shifting focus now to another top voice. India's 18th Lok Sabha has been sworn in. President Murmu has put the roadmap for the next 5 years. What does it pan out? Let's get in Martin Wolf, British journalist, as the second top voice on the show. Martin, thanks much for speaking to NDTV. My first question to you is that this is an important week for India. We speak at a time when India has been added to the Emerging Market Fund of JP Morgan and big fund inflows are expected. How do you see this? Do you expect $7 trillion now very much being a big target as far as India's economy is concerned?
The big transformation was in the early 90s when the economy was decisively opened up and it started generating much faster growth than before. It's gone up and down a bit since then. Sometimes it does a bit better, sometimes worse. But I think it is plausible that India can sustain growth of 6 or 7% a year in real terms over the foreseeable future. Now, I've done some little estimating on this $7 trillion economy, and that implies that the economy grows in dollars at about 10% a year. So if it grows in real terms at 6 or 7, inflation in dollars of the Indian economy in dollars is 3 percentage points or so, then 10% seems plausible. And so a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number. Of course, the dollar wouldn't be worth quite as much as it is now.
And to achieve that, Mr. Wolf, what would your priorities be for the next 5 years?
My own view has always been that if India is to sustain that growth and become a true high-income country, it has to industrialize more. It's going to need to have faster growth in industry than it's had. It's been remarkably service dependent. Maybe that can continue indefinitely. So the question of whether India can, to a significant degree, given its scale, replace China is an enormously important question, it seems to me. It obviously has to sustain very high investment rates, at least 30% of GDP, possibly more, to sustain that sort of growth. But I think the crucial issues for India are about human beings, education and employment for the whole society.
I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. I have to leave it there, Mr. Wolf. Thanks much for speaking to NDTV. And with that, completely timed out on this edition of India Sense. Thanks very much for watching.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's best 5G smartphone brand.
Showdown over NEET irregularities in Parliament. Rahul Gandhi says government did not allow a discussion. Hemant Soren leaves jail after 5 months. Former CM has been granted bail by the Jharkhand High Court. 1 dead while 6 were injured after roof collapsed at Delhi's airport. Civil Aviation Ministry orders war rooms and seeks a detailed report. Government says they will review the airport infrastructure. Monsoon brings mayhem to Delhi. Torrential rain breaks 88-year-old record.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। आज ही जाइए पैसाबाजार.com पर और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत किसी को भी कभी भी पड़ सकती है।
चल एक्टिंग थोड़ा भेल बनो।
ये आया बात बोल। पैसाबाजार.com।
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
The biggest democratic exercise in the world. Team NDTV covers it from ground zero.
BJP really had to fight a tough election this time.
Unprecedented exercise. Unmatched coverage.
There is no dispute. जनता को decide करना है.
From polling to counting, NDTV brought you the most trustworthy news and updates. Elections mean NDTV.
Get ready for the ride of your life. NDTV brings you the NDTV Auto Show with me, Mugdha Mishra. From the fastest supercars to the sleekest new energy vehicles to your trusted daily ride, we cover it all. Every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7. Your next great escape starts here.
वैसे स्मार्ट से याद आया, स्मार्टफोन्स हम सभी देखते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, दिस हैज द Qualcomm Snapdragon 8s Gen 3 which is based on 4nm. आपने सुना होगा ना अक्सर ऐसा 4nm, 5nm, 3nm. What is this nm if I were to tell you? Well, पता है क्या है? यहाँ पे nm is a nanometer. It's basically a unit.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello, Moto.
Hello and welcome to the Southern View. I'm Veera Raghav. Lots lined up on the show this evening, but first the headlines we're tracking this hour. When it rained, it poured in the national capital, breaking 88-year-old records. But after a night of heavy rains, a tragedy at the Delhi airport's Terminal 1 as the roof comes crashing down, killing 1 and leaving 6 injured. Several vehicles damaged at the centre. That's the Ministry of Civil Aviation seeks a detailed report. Both houses of parliament adjourned after strong protests from the opposition demanding a discussion on NEET. Government tells opposition to follow procedure. The opposition accuses the government of blocking a discussion on the NEET paper leak. Down south, Tamil Nadu Assembly passes a unanimous resolution demanding presidential assent to the state's anti-NEET bill. Resolution demands that the centre scrap NEET across the country. Former Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren leaves jail after 5 months. He says a false narrative was created to put him behind bars. First up, a quick check of the latest on that roof collapse at Terminal 1 of the Delhi International Airport, which killed 1 person and left 6 others injured early this morning. It's something that could scare any air traveller. The airport management has set up a committee now to probe that roof collapse, and the Ministry of Civil Aviation has sought a report on the incident. In every way, a scary incident there, as a portion of the roof that you see on your screens collapsed after heavy rainfall and crashed on vehicles and people. Operations were halted, remain halted in T1 after that collapse. Those pictures there on your screens tell the story. Meanwhile, the Civil Aviation Ministry has also told airlines to monitor a surge in airfares apart from seeking a report, as I mentioned, on that roof collapse. NDTV's Vedant Agarwal now joins us for the latest. Vedant, scary images there, but tell us what the latest is and any disruptions that's caused to operations there at the Delhi airport.
Well, Veera, I come to you from one of the busiest roads of the national capital, very close to South Delhi, in fact, very close to where our office is as well. And you can see, there's smooth traffic movement here. In fact, this road was, severely waterlogged this morning when I was reporting from here. But, the restoration work has gone on for about 4 or 5 hours. In fact, there was, attempt to sort of pump out that water. And it was, remember, just the first spell of rain. Which is why, right now the traffic movement seems to be smooth at busy roads, including the Minto Road, of course, which is, of course, one of the worst affected areas every time we see this sort of rain mayhem here in the national capital. But, of course, the Met Department has predicted that in the next 2 days, they've sounded an orange category alert. They're predicting heavier showers in the next 2 days. And the basic problem remains the same. In fact, if I can ask my camera person to show you, it's actually, these drains which need desilting, and that continues to be the basic problem as far as the rain mayhem is concerned. In fact, there was a huge political war of words between the centre and the Aam Aadmi Party earlier as well. The central government again has blamed the Aam Aadmi Party government for the decongestion of drains. The Aam Aadmi Party government, however, says that it was because of the record-breaking nature of the rain that Delhi received last night that we are seeing the kind of scenes we saw today, this morning. Now remember, a couple of important things here. If you look at government data shows that over 700 drains that are over 4 feet deep, they need cleaning, and close to 1 lakh tons of waste needs to be cleared as far as these deep drains are concerned. There are, of course, many smaller drains as well which need cleaning. This continues to be the most important, the sort of root cause of why Delhi is at a risk of flooding yet again. Right now, of course, the Yamuna is not flowing above the danger mark, which is why the situation is not so bad. But if that happens, the situation can really spiral out of control. Right now here, as you can see, there's smooth traffic movement in the national capital, on key routes, including the arterial roads, the commute roads, including the ring road as well. But in the next 2 days, the government will be on high alert because the Met Department has predicted heavy to very heavy rainfall.
Right, Vedant, of course, for a lot of us outside, yes, every city seems to be facing that sudden deluge. Blame it on climate change, extreme heat on the one side, then heavy downpours. But a very quick update, if you can, on the Delhi airport and T1 and that roof collapse there.
That's right, Veera. So the latest that we are getting, of course, is that the restoration work is still underway. Heavy machines have been brought as well. Now remember, all low-cost airlines, particularly the SpiceJet and Indigo, they have cancelled all their flights from Terminal 1 because that roof collapse left behind a trail of damage. The restoration work will take 5 to 6 more hours is what we are being told by authorities. You have senior officials of the Civil Aviation Ministry on the ground as well. In fact, as we speak, the Civil Aviation Minister is chairing back-to-back meetings. This is, of course, his first challenge after assuming office. But as far as the update on Terminal 1 is concerned, all flight operations have been suspended from Terminal 1 till 12 p.m. Till midnight today.
Right. Thanks very much, Vedant. Of course, heavy rains there in Delhi. A reprieve right now, but like every other city and every part of the world perhaps is facing sudden breaking records in terms of downpour there, just as records on heat were broken a few days ago. But thanks very much there, Vedant Agarwal. Now to the continuing face-off in Parliament. Both houses were adjourned after strong protests from opposition MPs demanding a discussion on the NEET paper leak. In fact, opposition MPs trooped to the well of the House in the Rajya Sabha demanding a discussion. After continued protests by the opposition, the House was adjourned. In the Lok Sabha, as soon as the House convened, India Bloc members demanded for an adjournment motion to suspend all other business and discuss the NEET issue. While Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi demanded a discussion, Speaker Om Birla said he could not allow it as the House was to take up the motion of thanks to the President's address. These are reactions that came in from outside of Parliament.
The students want a resolution quickly. So the idea behind the discussion was that we get a resolution to this issue because crores and crores of people, their family members are in pain. They don't know what is going to happen in the future, and it's important that we give them clarity. It's unfortunate that the government didn't want this. It's sad that the Prime Minister of India, who in fact should be leading the discussion and should be telling us about his opinion and should be telling us about what he is going to do, simply doesn't want a debate.
हम किसी को भी उसमें से छोड़ने वाले नहीं है। एनटीए की जो दायित्व में थे उनको निवृत्त करके और एक उच्च अधिकारियों को काम दिया गया है। ये सारे सरकार की प्रतिबद्धता की प्रमाण है। हम कोई लिपापोती की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं रखेंगे। सारा विषय में हर एक अंतराल में आपके सामने विषय को रख ही रहा हूं और हम देश को आश्वस्त करते हैं। देखिए, विपक्ष को फिर मैं निवेदन करूंगा, मैं कोई राजनीतिक भाषा कहना नहीं चाहता हूं। देश की विद्यार्थियों की हित में उनके मन में द्वंद्व ना बढ़ाया जाए।
The opposition leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi ji, raised the very important issue of NEET, and when he started to articulate the need for ruling as well as opposition benches to be in one voice on NEET, the mic was switched off and we protested, we demanded that opposition leader should be allowed to speak, but it was not allowed, therefore the house is adjourned till 12 o'clock.
कोई भी मुद्दा विपक्ष के लोग उठाना चाहे उसको पर्याप्त समय दिया जाएगा और राष्ट्रपति का अभिभाषण के चर्चा के प्रस्ताव के दौरान पूरा अपने बात रख सकते हैं। और हम सर आपके माध्यम से मैं विपक्ष के लोगों को आश्वासन देता हूं कि चर्चा के दौरान कोई भी मुद्दा आएगा हम जवाब के लिए तैयार हैं, पूर्ण रूप से हम जवाब भी देंगे।
Well, in Tamil Nadu, a state where the opposition to NEET has been intense ever since the system was introduced, the State Assembly passed a unanimous resolution demanding that the President give assent to the anti-NEET bill, as it's called, passed by the State Assembly, that would exempt the state from the mandatory test for undergraduate medical admissions. The resolution also demands an amendment to the National Medical Commission Act to do away with NEET countrywide. Let's just listen in to Chief Minister M.K. Stalin, who moved that resolution in the Tamil Nadu Assembly.
முன்னோடி சேர்க்கை முறையை நாம் பின்பற்றி வருகிறோம். இந்த முறையால் தான் தமிழ்நாட்டின் அனைத்து பகுதிகளில் இருந்தும் மருத்துவர்கள் உருவாகவும் அனைத்து பகுதிகளுக்கும் சிறப்பான மருத்துவ சேவைகளை வழங்கிடவும் முடிந்தது. ஆனால் 2017ஆம் ஆண்டில் மருத்துவ மாணவர் சேர்க்கைக்கு நீட் தேர்வை ஒன்றிய அரசு கட்டாயமாக்கிய பின்பு இந்த நிலை முற்றிலும் மாறி மருத்துவ படிப்பு என்பது ஏழை எளிய மாணவர்களுக்கு எட்டாக்கனியாகிவிட்டது.
Sam Daniel now joins us live, who's followed both the DMK stand and Tamil Nadu on the NEET issue very closely. Sam, as expected, Tamil Nadu taking a very, very strong position on NEET as it has in the past. Obviously, the issue is resonating in Parliament as well, and perhaps will when Parliament reconvenes next week.
That's right, Viraraghav. Since the anti-NEET protests have extended beyond Tamil Nadu and several states across the country, the Tamil Nadu government feels it's right time to reinforce its demand, and it believes that the protests only bolsters the cause behind its demand. And specifically mentioning the impact of NEET in Tamil Nadu, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin on the floor of the House said that poor students are not able to crack NEET because they are unable to afford the heavy costs for private coaching. And before NEET, he says, doctors were able to come from all areas across Tamil Nadu, because of which they were able to give a better health care. But now, since 2017, he says medical education has become out of reach for poor students, especially those coming from rural areas, because of which in the future, healthcare could be affected in villages and rural backward areas. That's what he has said. Of course, those who argue in favor of NEET would say the system helps them to identify students who have a better understanding compared to those who secure high marks through rote learning.
Right. Right. Thanks very much, Sam. We'll keep a very close watch on that. Now to our special focus this evening. In Karnataka, the Pani Puri is now under a scanner after carcinogenous chemicals were found in 43 of 260 samples that were tested statewide. Health authorities in the state are now discussing regulatory measures on the Pani Puri. The chemicals were mainly found in the powder used to make the sweet and sour water and some chutneys. Remember, chemicals, coloring agents like rhodamine B were found in cotton candy, gobi Manchurian, kebabs and tikkas, and use of those substances have been banned in Karnataka. Violation of that ban could lead to imprisonment and a hefty fine, but implementation of it could be a critical challenge. Joining me now for this exclusive interaction, Dinesh, before we can go across to Karnataka's Health Minister Dinesh Gundurao, who will join us in a bit, let's NDTV's Pratibha Raman figures out why you need to be wary of what goes into your Pani Puri now.
After gobi Manchurian as well as kebabs, now Pani Puris come under the scanner when it comes to the Food and Health Department here in Karnataka. Out of 260 samples that were collected from Pani Puri stalls across the state, around 41 of those samples were found to have artificial substances as well as cancer-causing agents. We also hear that around 18 of them were found to be of poor quality. We have to wait to see what kind of standards would be introduced by the department before one can really consume these Pani Puris. But in the meantime, the onus lies on both the eaters as well as the makers to ensure that natural substances are used and not artificial substances, so that health becomes prime importance here in Karnataka. Before you consume that Pani Puri, ensure where you eat it and whether high quality standards are maintained. With camera person Govind, Pratibha Raman in Bengaluru for NDTV.
As I mentioned a little while ago, joining us now for this exclusive conversation, Karnataka's Health Minister Dinesh Gundurao. Sir, thanks very much for speaking to us. Dinesh, the Pani Puri, gobi Manchurian, as tasty as they all seem, we have to be careful about what's in them in terms of ingredients. From an administrator's point of view, how difficult is it to enforce and regulate the kind of substances that are used in the pani puri or the gobi Manchurian or the different tikkas, because this may not be a problem just restricted to Karnataka. It could be a nationwide issue.
See, food safety department, which comes under the health department, has been proactive since the last 4, 5, 6 months in trying to find out which are the food items that are, using these kind of items which can damage a person's health. And since food is directly connected to a person's health, or what we consume has a great impact on a person's health. So this is something that we are looking at it very seriously and doing it very systematically. We are taking samples, finding out exactly what is the chemicals that are being used. Is it authorized or not authorized? And is it carcinogenic or not? So we found out in things like cotton candy and gobi Manchurian, these coloring agents that was being used are not meant to be used, and these are banned substances. Similarly, now in Pani Puri also, a lot of samples have been taken, and we have found that those chutneys and those sweet the khatta and meeta that they use, many of them contain unsafe chemicals in them. Which causes damage if used on a if consumed on a regular basis. So we are taking action, and we will be taking action in banning the use of all this. And at the same time, we are warning the people that whoever does this in the future, we will implement the law in its full spirit, and whatever is there in the law to take action against them, we will take. Also, we are also creating awareness amongst the public that they should be aware, because ultimately this is in your hands. What you eat and where you eat and all that is ultimately in the individual's hands. So you be aware of what's happening and be a little bit more discreet, and will be a little bit more careful in when you go out, whether it's a restaurant or a street food vendor or wherever it may be. Just ensure that you get good quality, and that should be something that I think every citizen should be aware of.
It's an important point that you make there, Dinesh, about people being aware. As I mentioned at the start, while Karnataka may have found in samples some ingredients used in a pani puri, it could well be a large national issue. Look, in terms of the same ingredients being used in another state, etc. As at a ministerial level, is there conversation across the country about the kind of substances that are used, or let's say knowledge that you have? Is it shared with the rest? How does that work?
I think that whatever we do will reverberate across the country, because many states also will see what we are doing and pick it up. In fact, cotton candy was first picked up in Tamil Nadu, and we heard it from there. Then we started doing our own investigations. So I think this will have a cross-state impact definitely, and also people will start ensuring that we need to look at this more seriously. Probably many people have not given due attention to this. There is a law, there are acts, and these things have to be done by the authorities. But since we have not really looked at it very seriously, since implementation has been lax, I think the focus was not there. Now we are bringing it into focus, because health and lifestyle, food and lifestyle is having a huge impact on health. And diseases like hypertension, diabetes, which are in fact leading to heart attacks, strokes, all this is a combination of the kind of life we lead and the kind of food we eat. So I think greater awareness, better implementation of the laws, these things are going to really become more and more important in the future. And I think since social media is so big today, I think these stories will be picked up and more people will get aware. And I hopefully this will create a big impact across the country. And from our department also, we will be writing to Government of India and mention to them our findings. And probably they can also take it up at the national level.
Okay, very quickly, Dinesh, you are from Bangalore South, Bangalore Central, your constituency has several food joints. I'm sure you enjoy your pani puri as well. Does this make you wary of all kinds of foods that's available left, right and center? And also, in terms of just the pani puri itself, what kind of regulations are you looking at? And in terms of implementation challenges, quickly.
I think human nature somewhere, I don't know whether people take things very seriously sometimes, but I think our duty is to bring it to the a person's knowledge that you should be careful. Ultimately, we all enjoy good food. But today what's happening is, I think, the use of these kind of chemicals to not only ensure, one is the quality of the food. The second thing is the appearance of the food. All these things are being done to make the food look brighter, better, in fact, beautifying the food, which is unnecessary. I think as long as you get good quality food, that is more important. Of course, there is pollution everywhere. Chemicals are being used. Maybe even the vegetables that we eat are, have got some chemical ingredients. These are all issues of concern. But I think what we can do and what we can control, we should. And of course, everyone likes a good food and eat, go out, eat, enjoy the food. I don't want to spoil people's enjoyment of what they eat. But I think at the same time, we as a government, and since we have the authority, we should definitely ensure that good standards are being maintained. And the people who produce, they should become more vigilant and aware that, they shouldn't do these things. And the people who consume, they also should be, I think, careful of where they're going. And a little bit of discretion will always help, I think.
Right, as you make a very important point, it's more about awareness. That's the only way that we can perhaps circumvent some of these ingredients, both in terms of those who use it to make the food as well as those who consume it. Thanks very much, Dinesh Gundurao. We'll all enjoy healthy pani puris at healthy places with healthy ingredients. Perhaps that's the message. But from that health scare to Kalki 2898, after all the hype, has the Star Wars of Indian cinema set the global box office ablaze in its opening weekend? With 192 crores on day one, it does have a magical opening, but what's in store for the weekend? NDTV's Abira Dhar and Uma Sudhir have this report.
कितना अच्छा सपना देख रहा था। हम दोनों कॉम्प्लेक्स में थे।
1 million units है क्या तेरे पास?
कुछ नहीं बचा।
Kalki 2898 AD hit the theaters with a giant thud.
मेरे साथ आ जाओ।
यूनिट ज्यादा बोलेगा क्या?
But is India's most expensive movie a movie stunner or a dud?
इस दुनिया में बस एक ही साइड होती है। खुद की साइड।
Going by the first day's earnings, it's seen an impressive start.
वो लड़की मुझे चाहिए।
पॉइंट ये है कि मैं ही हूँ जो उसे ला सकता हूँ।
The Prabhas Amitabh Bachchan Deepika Padukone starrer, which released on a Thursday, has racked up nearly 192 crores worldwide on day one.
हमारी जंग फिर से शुरू हो गई है।
It is the highest grossing opener, surpassing the previous best figure of Fighter. In its 4-day-long weekend, Kalki 2898 AD is expected to touch the 500 crore mark, despite the T20 World Cup finale over the weekend. This epic saga, directed by visionary filmmaker Naga Ashwin, transports the viewer into a world where ancient legends and modern aesthetics congregate. With its stunning visuals and intricate set designs.
पूरी दुनिया से सब छीन लोगे तो सब कुछ तो होगा ही।
Not just the first day earnings, Kalki has also broken international box office records for Indian movies.
Supreme Yaskin.
It broke the highest grossing premiere record of Salad and RRR in North America.
एक की रक्षक, केवल एक।
So far, 2024 has been a lukewarm year for the box office, and films like Kalki have seen as a shot in the arm for the film industry.
See, when you make a movie of this size and scale, and you have Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, Mr. Kamal Hassan, a superstar like Prabhas, Deepika Padukone, and various others in its star cast with such mounting scale and budgets, the expectations obviously are sky high. And to actually meet up to those expectations with the kind of opening that Kalki has seen is truly unprecedented.
डरो मत, एक नया युग आ रहा है।
Radhar for NDTV.
Well, joining me now is Saibal Chatterjee, Indian film critic. Saibal, what's the verdict on Kalki 2898?
See, I think it's a film that has got off to a great start, and I mean, if it continues in the same vein, then it'll reach, the stratosphere. But even if it slows down, even if it were to slow down over the next week and a half, it will still be a certified hit. I mean, it's already a hit. It's collected like close to 200 crores worldwide. And it's just a sort of film that probably the Indian audience was waiting for. I mean, there was a fighter a while back, but last year we had Jawan and Pathan, but there have been too many duds, big budget duds that have rocked the industry over the past year and a half. So I think Kalki was the kind of film that it sort of primarily puts a Marvel universe spin on Indian mythology. It's the Marvelization of Indian mythology in a sense. I mean, it combines, Star Wars and all the superhero movies that come out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what it does is it's both religious and Puritanian. It's Indian mythology and aesthetics that are borrowed from different places. I mean, this is also inspired in part by the P.D. James novel, The Children of Men, which